With offices in Radford and Blacksburg, Patrick K. Moore is a client-focused, community-involved law firm committed to you. If a legal issue touches your family, finances, or future, we can help. Whether it's real estate, business law, or estate planning, Patrick Moore welcomes the opportunity to speak with you about your legal issues.
Hi everyone, I'm Rose Martin and we are right around the corner in Moneta, Virginia with Linda Kay Simmons. And her book, Lightning Shall Strike, tells the story of 4 women and 2 men who are living in a dystopian culture that oppresses women. They've got to make some really tough choices and it's not easy. But don't worry, because lightning is going to strike in rural Virginia. Well, Linda Kay, welcome to Right Around the Corner.
Oh, thanks so much for coming.
And this is such a beautiful home space. And you were telling me that it's just full of family.
Well, it's decorated grandma, great-grandma, great-aunt, family. Every piece in my house has a history. I was born in the wrong era. So I'm in the era of my book, so I'm surrounded by things everywhere I go.
Oh, it's beautiful.
Thank
and
you.
It's so nice for you to have us here. So growing up, was it always a fascination with the things from your ancestors and to be surrounded by those treasures?
You know, it was. My family goes back 200 years in Franklin County. In fact, we still own some of the property there. I lived in Roanoke City, but every weekend and every holiday, it was to the grandparents, it was to Franklin County and all that. And I love the family stories of the elders. I may not remember a lot of details about other things, but I remember stories.
And Were you a storyteller?
Yes, I am a storyteller. I mean, I really am. But as life would have it, I felt a little stuck and cloistered, like my character Lula May will talk about later. And I had to leave Roanoke, and I took to the friendly skies as a sky goddess for 31 years with Piedmont Airlines and all that kind of thing. And then I had enough, and like a homing pigeon, came back to Franklin County, and I have been here ever since, writing. Got into a writer's group. That's the most wonderful thing anybody can ever do. It's therapy. It's everything. And I've been in that for 6 years, and it lit the flame, and it keeps the flame lit.
You were telling me that the actual writing part happened a little bit later as a second career. So you felt kind of boxed in as a child, growing up in the 50s and 60s. Didn't feel like there was too many opportunities for you?
No, I did not. It was sort of oppressive in a way that I only thought options were secretary or school teacher, and my mother didn't work, and she didn't drive till I was in high school. And I just needed to get out and be out in the world a little bit more. And so I broke all the social norms and became a stewardess and got a sports car and all that. But I'd always written. I'd always written short stories and poems and journaled, and did a lot with dream work. And, you know, I kept all those books. So I'd always sort of been a closet writer. But then retiring here after 31 years with the airline, that made me 55. I started really writing in about 62, 63, I hit my stride.
Yay, that's good. That's wonderful to hear. How about the early inspiration for writing? From your mom, your dad, teachers?
You know what, this is
friends?
so sweet. This is so sweet. In a family Bible that was my grandmother's, I found a little poem sonnet she wrote called Little Jim. And it was so cute, and I kept that and I treasured it. And as a child, my mama had a Remington typewriter, and she always thought she'd write The Great Harlequin. And she found out that it never came to fruition. So in a way, I think the gene was there. It was planted in me, and I've been able to take it and go with it. So I feel like I carry them with me when I do that. So that's
a sweet story.
Isn't that a sweet story? And my mama always took me to libraries, and you know, she always read to me. And when I was a little child, she had me make my own books, write my own books, and she'd put a little card in the back, and there was a stamper.
Oh, so like at the library.
Family members had to check out my books.
Oh, how fun.
So, I mean, that was as a little child. So, yeah, she imprinted me big time.
Oh, I love that. That is so sweet.
Yeah.
So then you decided that you just needed to see the world.
Oh, yeah. And I did.
31 years?
31 years.
Wow. What a career to be able to see so many things and visit so many places in the
And
world.
it hasn't stopped. I still go about once a year. I take a big trip. Actually, last year this time I was in Morocco, and I had the most wonderful thing happen around this book, Lightning Shall Strike, that I want to tell you about.
Oh, good. Well, and you know, that's interesting because you spent 31 years traveling the world, and yet when you came home, as you said, you came back here, and your books are personal, and they're family, and they're back to your roots. They're right here in rural Virginia or in Franklin County, and they bring people into the setting. And your research for some of the places, it was amazing that some of the places that don't even exist anymore, like you were talking about the Woolworth counter, you know, and I can remember going to Woolworths, they were nationwide. Carol remembers going and having grilled cheese sandwiches at the Woolworth counter. And just some of those places, what was that research like for you to get the places and put them in the right time frame for your
books? You know, that was just my life. And one funny story about Woolworth, I remember going in there. I graduated from Patrick Henry High School in 1972. So I guess it was 1970. I went to the Woolworth counter, and the lady behind the counter wouldn't, and I was a little hippie, and she wouldn't serve me because I didn't have on a bra.
Oh, my. No hippies coming into Woolworth.
And not without bras, they didn't.
Not without bras specifically. Oh, gosh. And how about some of the other fun places that you researched?
Driving through Endicott and Floyd and just talking to all kinds of people. The church that I sort of invented in my book was based on some other kind of churches that handled snakes and did things, and I wasn't particularly exposed to that.
That was going to be one of my questions. Did you actually go to a church that had the snake charmers and the snake handling in there?
I've seen one.
You have?
I have seen one. I've gone to one in West Virginia. So yeah, when you write a book like this, you just don't know where you're going to go, who you're going to meet. One door opens another. Just when you get talking, things happen. And that's the whole thing about being a storyteller and listening to stories.
So when you put that process together, where does it start for you to come up with a new story? And then how do you build it?
Well, you know, usually what happens to me is I'll get a character in my head. Like from a young girl, I was fascinated with Rhodessa Rose, the character in my book, Kay Mountain. She was a living, breathing woman married to my uncle, but only for a year. And she succumbed to tuberculosis. I just thought that was so tragic as a young girl. She was only like 22 when she died. They were only married a year. And she's buried at Nineveh Church on Hardy Road. So I built the whole book around her as she became living, breathing flesh. And I wanted her to have the life she never had. And I ran her through all kinds of escapades in the book, Kay Mountain. And she's kind of a little folk legend down here. So,
well, and that's
the moonshining. They love
of course, the moonshining.
They love the
Franklin
moonshining.
County. Well, and there's so many references to that in Franklin County, and then the other places around, which I think is so endearing for people to be able to say, gosh, I know that. I was there. It might not be here anymore, but I've heard about it, or I went there as a child. And I bet that's some of the feedback that you get.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what? I work part-time at an assisted living facility. And so my seniors have read my books, and they've shared them with their children, and they've shared them with their children. Oh. And it's been really fun because sometimes these books have hit, you know, they're intergenerational, and the comments that come back to me, and you know, when are you writing your next book? When it's coming out? And so anyway, so I love my senior citizens.
Oh, that's fun. That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. And I'm sure they love having you too.
Oh, they do.
And they can reminisce about the places because, as I said, you brought it back home.
That's right.
So when you think about your process, so you get a character in mind first. And then do you build a story around the character, and then how about having the other characters evolve? Are they based on real family members, people you've met, a compilation of everybody?
All that. What I do, Rose, is I walk. I walk so much. And they'll start talking.
So you actually hear...
they kind of tell me what they want to tell me. Nothing with me is linear. Everything is here, it's there, it's everywhere. And then I snatch my pieces and, you know, get them into the laptop, get them down on pen and paper, and then another character will come in, or a scene, and that's just sort of how it works for me. I guess I'm kind of an intuitive writer, if there's such a word as that.
Sure.
I can't do anything. I can't use a chart. I don't know how anything's going to end necessarily. It just kind of comes. and then I piece it and put it all together.
So when you have all these pieces and parts, I was reading that you just keep lots of scraps of different paper around of things you don't want to forget about. And then you just kind of figure out how they're going to fit?
Yeah, and it's easier when I get it down on paper and then just sort of start working with it. And if I get stuck, hey, glass of wine in the bathtub.
Yeah. So walking and wine, the perfect.
And the bathtub.
And the hot bath.
And the hot bath. And the hot bath is so good. And things seem to start flowing a little bit for me. And they usually come back to characters in my family, personality traits of people in my family. I'll actually pick up a picture like of my grandmother upstairs, and I needed the character Nettie, and I wanted to know what Nettie looked like. And I said, well, Nettie would look like my grandmother. So I took the features of my grandmother and put them in the book. And then I was like, if you were going to tell me something here, what would it be? So I just kind of like to keep an open mind and an open heart and just hear and be with what comes.
And is that the same way to shut down the character when their scene is over, or how you're going to finish up the book? Does it seem to come to like a natural ending to then you just move on to another storyline, or you move on to another chapter? Because it's interesting how you write them with their name at the beginning of a chapter. So we kind of hear it in the different voices. And that was fascinating to hear them in the different voices as I move through the work.
They're so alive to me, they stay alive.
Okay.
I've often wondered, like, when I pass this earthly plane, if they're all going to be waiting for me.
Yeah, and so you did it right, or you missed out on a couple things?
Yeah, what kind of response I'm going to get.
What about the editing process? How does that work for you?
Well, that's my least favorite part. The line editing is sort of an arduous task. So you do it, and then, you do it, read it again and again, and this and this.
And you mentioned the writers group. Does the writers group give you feedback on the content, on the editing? How does that help support you?
Really what we do is we go in and we share what we've written, and we get feedback and really good critique. And I've sent some of my stuff to my friends to read with the writers group, and they've come back with good suggestions. So that's how we sort of feed each other. We'll say, well, that works, or that doesn't work, or I had one scene about cars, and I didn't know what I was talking about, and I'd written something, and it was like, no, that's not.
You're lost.
You're lost here. Let me help you with that. Because it was about like a 1948 Studebaker. But there was somebody in the group that knew about 1948 Studebakers. So, they got me set on the right track.
Well, and I also found it fascinating that your books don't just stay in print, because now you've also started to put them on stage.
Yeah, that's so much fun. And I can't tell you, I never dreamed this would happen. I thought my daughter was the actress. I paid all the college tuition for her to get her, acting thing. But I got the bug. I didn't get it till 64 and put on a little play here in the living room, and then that took off to something else. So now Lake Players and have put on one of my productions, and the Coffee House series has put on one, and then we have another one coming up. So
wonderful.
It's fun. So I'm a bit of an actress too, and I get to play my main characters and invite my friends and community to play with me.
And didn't we all do that as children?
Yeah.
Right? Do you remember growing up, you'd put on a play and the whole family was sitting around watching, and you'd make up tickets for them, and they had to be a part of it. That's wonderful.
Well, that's what I love about this stage of life, is just the constant reinvention of selves. And that's what I like to do with my characters. I find them in these struggling, difficult places and pull them through, as best I can. And
that's a good point, because they do get into some tough situations
where
they've got to make some really tough choices.
Yeah.
And you're rooting for them.
Right.
And you're hoping, and you're seeing how they put the pieces together in order to problem solve or in order to make something better in their lives.
Let me tell you a little something about my book, Lightning Shall Strike, because I was there last year in Morocco. I was with an Oats tour, and we went to a association run by women in the High Atlas Mountains, and it wasn't too long after the beheadings, if you can remember that. Only one woman spoke English at all. The others didn't. and we got to talking, and they served us coffee, and you bought cookies, and that's how they made a little money, the women that were allowed to do this. So I had that book with me, and on the back of it is my picture. And I said to her, I said, are you taking notes of your enterprise and the wonderful thing you're doing for women here? Oh, no. And I said, just take notes, take notes. Somebody eventually will come along here and help you. And who knows, you could maybe write a book. Here's my book. And then I turned the picture over with my book, and she was like astounded. I don't know if she'd ever had a book.
Wow.
I left her the book, and then I started feeling like, oh God, you know, it's not a happy, uplifting book in the beginning. It's dark. And I really kind of worried about that, and then it came over me. And when I was with her, this feeling washed over all of us about this moment this woman had seen. A woman had written a book, and it was like, and she was like, then I got to thinking, if the names had been changed in that book to Fatima, if I had used Muslim names in the book, it was perfect. It was her life. It's a universal story.
That's true, right? The oppression of women throughout history or in different cultures.
Yeah, and how oppressed actually the men are too. They just don't know it. But I just, I couldn't get over that came over me, and I left her that book. So, you know, it'll be interesting to see if ever I hear anything more back from that.
Who knows where this path may cross.
But, you know, I always thought if I didn't write this book for any other reason, it belonged in that woman's hands, and it belonged in the high Atlas Mountains in Morocco.
That's a great story, and who knows what that inspiration or what happens when we touch each other's lives in a way, you know? So let's get to Lightning. Wow, I've got to tell you, looking at the characters, like you immediately kind of fall in love with Mamie and Joseph. But share with me your process about how you decided on the characters and their particular traits, and then how they were going to you know, survive in this really difficult culture.
Well, Thaddeus is not a likable guy.
No, Thaddeus is definitely not a likable guy. And to set it up for our viewers, Thaddeus is kind of this elder who makes his way to becoming an elder, which is his goal forever, right? But he seems like he was awful from a child. I get that feeling at the end of, reading through.
Yeah.
And I don't even want to know who he's based on, because we don't want any members of your family calling you out on Thaddeus for sure.
You know, the one good thing about the family members that I brought into this, they're no longer here. So I'm safe. And then Mamie. Mamie, it was kind of based on an aunt of mine that had a short, tragic life. And I wanted to remember her in some sort of way. She found love once. Mamie did. My Aunt Mamie. And
well, and so did Mamie in the book.
And so all of this sort of weaves together. I weave some of these things, you know.
So Mamie's adopted, and so she kind of comes into the family. And these this particular church, the Believers,
the Waters of God Believers.
The Waters of God Believers. Share with me the kind of like the rules, because there's a touch of and Amish. There's a touch of dystopian, you know, cultures in there, and yet the women have very strong spirits. The women that you placed in here were tough. I mean, Lula May was tough. You know, when I look at what some of the stuff Ida was doing in here, it was really a way to showcase for women, no matter where you are, no matter what's going on with you, there's a door. Yeah,
there's the door, or there's sometimes it's just a little choice, but a little choice can make all the difference. I had an aunt, a great aunt, old order Duncan Church in my family. And this is probably a lot how the book started, but she wouldn't take off her husband's pants.
She was a trailblazer
then? She was the trailblazer. And her name was Izzy. And they would take her to Stanton. Because Stanton, Virginia, the psychiatric center then, I guess then it was called Asylum, was where you took disobedient wives and misfits.
And isn't that hard to believe?
Oh, it wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago. And if anybody wants to research that, oh my God, there's so much on the internet. But, so she had to get sent, I think, a couple times to not wear her husband's pants, to be the obedient wife she's supposed to, but don't think it stuck. I don't think it stuck at all.
And I love this scene about the throwing of the rocks.
Now, let me tell you, that is That's a true story. My Uncle Junior Greer, who passed away last year, told me that story. If they took you to Stanton, particularly if you were a man and you had done something, drunk in public or something bad, whatever they deemed bad, they would take you there and they would have a big pile of rocks and they would have you throw rocks from one side of the fence to the other side of the fence. And when you sobered up or got your wits about you and wanted to know why one day you threw them over one side of the wall, the next day you threw them over the other, you were deemed healthy enough to go home. Don't think they use that now.
Well, I hope not, right? I hope not. But then I'm thinking as I'm reading through, so, Mamie and Joseph fell in love early on. So there's a love story woven through there. And what about Lula Mae?
I love Lula Mae because Lula Mae's me.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because she became a flight attendant.
Right, she did.
She became a stewardess. It was a stewardess. And she bucked it and she left the house with nothing on but, a quilt she made into a dress. Because every time before when she would run away, she'd get caught. Well, who wouldn't pick up a girl in a gray dress and bonnet, on the side of the road? But she finally got it figured out. She made her escape. She got on with the airline and her life changed forever.
But then she went back home again, like you came back home here, and she protected, and she wanted to bring people, and save them.
Don't we all want to do that? Don't we all want to save people? Don't we all want to help those we love?
We do.
Yeah.
We do. Would you be willing to share with us some of the book?
Oh, yeah. I'm going to read you a little piece from Ida. Now, this is not actually from the book. This is something Ida wrote. Because Ida kept notes in her egg basket. She might have wanted to be a writer too, who knows? But I just want to give you a touch of Ida. Ida Mae Simpkins is my name. I'm a character who stepped out of the book, Lightning Shall Strike, by Linda Kay Simmons. To talk to women in particular, though men should read it, it'll do you all good. I'm going to tell you the story of how my father made me promise to watch over my brother, Thaddeus Simpkins, all his days. Oh, it was a vexing problem, but I was a dutiful daughter and too good for my own good. I wouldn't have kept that promise if I'd have known. I'd have gotten a job and made my way if I'd have known. I wished I'd have known who I really was. I wished I'd have known who I really was back then. I'd have read me some books. I'd have gone back to school. I'd have been kissed and loved with real tenderness. If I'd have known who I really was. If I'd have known who I really was back then. Thaddeus never cared for me. He never did. I should have left my brother's house time and time again with a lump to his head from my frying pan. If I'd have known who I really was, if I'd have known who I really was back then, I'd have cried far less, but I'd have laughed out loud. I'd have climbed apple trees wearing my own damn pants. If I'd have known who I really was back then. I'd have followed my own mind and listened to Thaddeus less. I'd have spoken my own words. I'd have spat and cursed. If I'd have known who I really was back then, I'd have said no, 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 instead of yes, yes, yes. I'd have been gone a long time ago if not for that promise. If I'd have known who I really was, if I'd have known who I really was back then. But I thought Thaddeus be sleeping in a pine box by now. I'd have thought that decon would have done the job by now. I'd have been gone a long time ago if I'd have known who I really was back then. I'd have been Ida, and that's good enough. Now go ahead, buy the book. Go on now, do as you're told.
Thank you for going into character and giving us a taste of Ida, because getting to know her in the book and then hearing you interpret her for us is a real treat.
Well, it was a journey for Ida to get to this point because it certainly didn't start out this way.
And yet at the end, you had this this almost sense of forgiveness for Thaddeus that I couldn't really get there. So how did that come about, that then you kind of just reconciled that?
Because Ida got the life she wanted. Ida got love that she wanted. She's reunited with Lula May, and she moves away from that whole society, and she starts over again. Because you know what? It's never too late. At 63, 64, you can decide to be an actress. You can write that book. You can do whatever you want to do, and that's what Ida did.
And it's kind of like your title, right? Lightning shall strike, which is interesting. When you read the book, you see the metaphorical connection between lightning, the actual physical lightning, and then was it your intent to also use the lightning to show the differences or the events in the characters' lives?
Well, there's all kinds of lightning shall strike. There's the white lightning that Thaddeus was drinking in the basement, or the cellar, and then there's the lightness of illumination when a thought or a great idea hits you. And then there's, the lightning, the physical lightning that knocks down the tree that kills someone. I mean, so yes, I use lightning in many, many ways.
And it was interesting to go back then to the cover and go through the book and see the lightning and be like, okay, now I get it. I get it. Yeah, it's happening to each individual character at a pivotal point in the story. What's your message for your readers about the book?
We all meet demons in our lives. We all meet challenges. We all go into the belly of the whale like Jonah. But then we all have angels and helpers and little opportunities that show up, that shine a light, just enough of a light to kind of make your way back up to a new place and a new landscape and a new horizon that you can start again and do it better.
Well, and who knows how you'll be inspired, right? Whether it's going to be walks, whether it's going to be a little wine in the bathtub, or like you're treating us to these bellinis today.
Raspberry bellinis.
It's been a treat to meet you. Thank you so much.
Oh, and thank you so much for coming. I've so enjoyed having you here.
So my special thanks to Linda Kay Simmons for having us hit her home in Moneta, sharing her work, Lightning Shall Strike. There's so much more to come. We're also going to get back to talking about her other book in some of our conversation online, so make sure to check it out. I'd be grateful if you share the links to the show with some of your friends. And until next time, I'm Rose Martin, and of course, I'll see you right around the corner.